And I think that's such an important, thing to touch upon is that it wasn't aligned for you. But that
Hmm.
being said, everything that this coach was teaching you, there's nothing wrong with that. Obviously, it works, and it works for a lot of people. But it's like you said, this wasn't aligned with you. This is what you wanted to do, and therefore you got the results that you got.
Yeah,
Right. And and
absolutely.
and
And
that
I,
gotta hurt you because you were like, I want to get the A, like you said, but
right.
and you don't get it, and it's like, what is wrong with me? What am I doing wrong here?
And then you see everybody else who's in the program having like all this success and
Hmm.
having these crazy testimonials. And, you're doing the things and you're like, oh, it's got to be something that's wrong with me. But one of the things that you touched on is one of the things I talk about a lot. You know, there's nothing wrong with the strategy coaches and the marketing coaches and the hacks, right? That are out there. What it is they're teaching you what worked for them.
Exactly. Yes.
And that's great. That's beautiful. That's a great thing, but you're not them,
Hmm.
right? You're not, your missions are not the same. So to think that there is only this one way is where a lot of people get stuck in that overthinking and procrastination and the burnout. So that was definitely a tough lesson to learn.
Yeah, but I think it's, even though it's a tough lesson, it's a really important lesson to learn. And, I think this is something that we see more and more of the entrepreneurs coming today is that, you know, the I feel like it's a little bit old and outdated way of thinking when it comes to online marketing that we have to do what everyone is telling us to do when we actually
Mhm.
need to just listen to ourselves and do the things that we want to do. Wouldn't you agree?
Absolutely. And, I feel like a lot of us, we all know that,
Hmm.
right? There's always like this point where even when you're stuck in overthinking an answer, you know what the answer is. It's just about being in a place where you can be like, I'm going to do this because it's what feels good. And I'm going to trust
Hmm.
that this is what's right for me, even though people think I'm crazy,
Yeah.
which
And I
people
think,
think most online entrepreneurs are crazy anyway.
right. But I think that we kind of need to go through all of this just to kind of understand that we can actually do things the way we want to do. Because if you don't go through these challenges, you won't actually know what you want to do. So you need to kind of try things out, test things out, get a feel for it, just to know what you want and what you don't want to do.
Hmm. Absolutely. And I even had one of my mentors when I had decided to make this pivot and we were really like crafting everything and just kind of working with like the mission.
Hmm.
He even said that when he first started, he learned all these systems and strategies and he was so scared to put his own spin on it because
Hmm.
he thought if he did, he would break it. And that's almost well, it's not even almost, that was what my older coaches were teaching us. Like,
Yeah.
if we tried everything that they told us to do and we're like, it's not working, it doesn't feel right, they're like, well, then you must just have a limiting belief that's
Hmm.
getting in the way. And that was their answer to everything. And I remember when I exited that program, I did like a live, you do like a graduation live, and I put it all out there. I was telling them, was like, go to the coaches, listen to them, take their expertise for what it is, but don't give your power away.
Hmm.
Like, this is your business, and there's a big difference between not doing something out of fear and not doing something because it's out of alignment.
Hmm.
And it's getting to know the difference between those two things that really can transform your business.
And how have you realized that you can see the difference between those 2?
Honestly, everybody sees it differently,
Hmm.
right? Everybody is going to experience those nudges and those knowings in a different way. For me, I've always been the type of person that's just kind of like, what's that saying where like you jump off the cliff and build a plane on the way down, right? That's how
Hmm.
I've lived my whole life. So for me, it's been a lot of deconditioning, a lot of getting rid of stories about myself and about my business and about how we need to do things. I know what a mentor that we share talks a lot about how we're raised with this employee mindset.
Hmm.
And that employee mindset is follow the rules, do the things, you'll get the success. When entrepreneurship is literally the exact opposite of that, right? So it takes so much time to decondition. And the more you decondition, the more you get to know who you are under all of that, the more you're going to be able to know what your truth is versus what everybody else's truth is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. I know what helped a lot for me was, you know, just to get a human design reading. I know people might not know what human design reading is, but it is basically just a way of learning more about yourself, I guess. You can say it real simplistically. And that helped me just to understand that it's okay to be who you are and do the things you've always done them, because that's the way you're meant to do them. There's nothing wrong with it. And just, how should I put it? Just to kind of own that and just go with that instead of trying to push yourself to do things like you said, the way the gurus, the experts, and all the people telling you to do it. Just gonna, yeah, it's gonna stop you. You're not gonna get that progress or that momentum that you're looking for.
Yeah, and if anything, you're wasting time, right?
Yeah.
All of this time that's spent trying to force somebody else's way, when if we just let go and just trusted that we already know what we're supposed to do and that our path is going to be what it's going to be, then we would get there faster. It's that gripping, that holding on to how things were or how we think they should be, that keeps us stuck. Now, with human design, you're going to get me to geek out a little bit.
Totally fine. Totally fine.
Human design was actually one of the biggest factors in me realizing what I was meant to do versus what I was doing, because I'm a splenic projector.
Okay.
Right. And we're about 18 to 20% of the population, when most people are some form of generator. So not to get like super technical into this, but for us, we're supposed to work less and like rest more and help guide the energy types on how to use their truth and their energy and everything that it is about them to make their life easier while still being in alignment. And when I found out I was a projector at first, I was like, what do you mean I don't have energy to go all day long? Like, what do you mean I can't pull 12-hour days? Well, that explains the caffeine addiction, right? So as I started deconditioning and getting more in touch with that, it was part of it's just another thing that adds to that higher self-awareness. And the more you can know yourself, the more you can trust yourself.
Yeah. And that description kind of fits so perfectly with what you're doing now. It was like spot on.
I know, it's wild. I got my first human design reading and she's like, she's like, what I'm kind of seeing here is that like, you're supposed to lead people to their truth through your truth. And I was like, mind blown. Right. And I was like, she didn't know anything about me. I was like, oh my gosh, like this is it. This is everything.
Yeah. Well, we kind of digressed a little bit there, but obviously all that helped you to realize that you were not moving in the right direction. And then you started to realize, okay, what am I supposed to do? How did you, was it the human design reading that kind of led you on the right path, or was it something else that helped you guide that way?
So for me, there's a lot of stubbornness in letting go of things. It's one of those things that I kind of have that internal battle with myself a lot. And I had actually started working with a new business coach, and he was much more about holding space for your higher self, right? So like, yeah, there's rules out there, but like, are there, rules out there? So it was through talking with him and realizing that I had one story. I had one story about myself that was keeping me in my old niche, right? In my health coaching field, and not letting me fully step into what I wanted to step into. And as ridiculous as it is, it was that I had it in my head that I could not help other entrepreneurs do anything until I was a millionaire.
Right. So you
Like
had to
I was,
be the
yeah,
successful entrepreneur before you could help any other
yes,
entrepreneurs. Yeah.
absolutely. I was like, I had to build this epic health coaching business. And then finally, once I did that, I could move into what I know I'm supposed to be doing.
Hmm.
And I stayed in that space, like I said, for like 5 months. It took me to finally step out of that. But once I did, it's once you see something and you can't unsee it anymore, that, like I said, that was it. It was either I was going to pivot or I was going to quit. And I ended up pivoting.
I love that though. I mean, you could have easily gone through that for years without even
Mhm.
realizing that you were heading down the wrong path and probably have a serious burnout, like
Yeah.
not recovering in a long time.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's crazy how it affects your relationships and stuff too. I mean, there was things going on in my marriage and with my kids, and of course, the past year's been crazy as it was,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
Without all of that. So all of that added on top of it, it was just it's just such a different feeling living in that forced space than it is living in this space.
Hmm.
It's and that's part of the knowing what your truth is too, right? Because the more you do, the more you go with what feels right to you, and the more you go with what you think your truth is, the more you know what that feels like
Hmm.
versus what being forced feels like my last launch. So right after I pivoted, I had it in my head. I was like, all right, I'm going to launch on this day. Right. And it
Hmm.
was only 5 weeks away. It was
Oh,
5 weeks
5 weeks,
away
that's
from my
not
pivot.
too bad. It could have been worse. I mean, it could have been just a couple of weeks.
Yes, yes. So it was 5 weeks away, and I was like, I don't have any audience for this new niche. Nobody knows about it.
Hmm.
Um, but I'm going to set this date, and I'm going to roll with it anyway because there was something in me that knew I had to do it. Like I knew that no matter what happened with that launch, for some reason, it needed to happen.
Hmm.
And I went through it, and it was definitely it was the easiest selling type event, if you will, the easiest I had ever put my offer out there,
Hmm.
right? Invited people to come work with me. Emotionally and mentally, I was just so beautifully detached from the results that I was able to show up in the best way possible.
Hmm.
And I didn't even realize that that was what I had gotten from that launch until I was talking to another friend who's about to start a launch. And she's like, I put my link out there and people start registering, but then like I'm not hitting this number and then I'm not hitting that number and then I get stuck in my head and then like I'm not showing up the same way and then I'm like, should I do this? There was none of that.
Hmm.
Right? There was none of that. And I realize now that the reason that that launch had to happen was for me to know what it feels like to be that detached from the outcome
Yeah,
so that I can now know when I'm getting back into my old stuff. Does that make sense?
absolutely.